Hello and welcome to the Ellenmade Book Club. Today we have another book club discussion video and we are talking about Pachinko by Min Jin Lee. So first of all, I just want to say thank you to anyone who has participated in the book club, anyone who has read the book or voted for the book or left a comment or a question for me to discuss or even showing up to watch this video. I appreciate it a lot and yeah, so thank you. I also want to mention that this video may contain spoilers. I try to keep it relatively spoiler-free and not be too specific about things, but I'm also kind of assuming that you have already read the book or that you don't mind spoilers. So just be aware of that. You're very welcome to keep watching if you want to. But yeah, I just want to give you a fair warning. So I read Pachinko as part of the book club, but I also read it as a part of a reading challenge that I set myself, where I tried to finish 3 big books in 1 week. And if you want to see how that went, you can watch my reading vlog of that. I also talked about this book in my August wrap-up video, so if you want to see what I had to say about it there, you can watch that. And also what I had to say about the other books that I read in August. So for this video, I'm going to focus on the questions that you asked on the community post where I asked you for your questions. And yeah, let's just get started with that. Emily at the Linguist's Library said that she always likes to hear what made someone gravitate towards a specific book. And so I figure I will start by explaining that. I wanted to read Pachinko because I've heard so many people talk about it and say that it's great. And it almost feels like a reference book at this point. Like if there's ever another book with themes of migration or a generational saga of some kind, it's going to say, for readers who loved Pachinko on the cover. And so it feels like common knowledge almost, and like a book that should be read. I also tend to gravitate towards the topic of migration and books and stories with that theme. Migration is a subject that fascinates me and interests me, and I think that it affects people on so many levels and in such profound ways. And so yeah, I just find that very interesting. Another reason is that I have read very little from or about East Asia, so I figured that this novel could give me some insight into the culture and history of Korea and Japan. And yeah, so that was another reason why I wanted to read this book. Next, I have a set of questions from Mimi at It's Mimi Duong. Thank you so much for your questions. And the first one is, how did you find the characters in Pachinko and did you enjoy them? Yeah, I enjoyed a lot of the characters in this book. I thought that there was a great variety of different characters and different personalities. So I thought that was very well written, and I also appreciated that most of them seemed to have good intentions and they all worked hard to reach their goals or to whatever path they were on, even if they made mistakes sometimes. Like that's also part of being human, is making mistakes. But I felt like the majority of the characters were good-natured and had a good heart. So I feel like there were a lot of likable characters and they all felt very realistic and human to me. I didn't like Hansu. I didn't like the way he treated Sunya, and I didn't like how he just sort of expected her to fall in line to fit what he wanted. And then he was very upset and not very understanding at all when she wasn't willing to do that. And so, yeah, I did not have very kind feelings toward him. He made me really mad right from the beginning. There were also things being said about sins which annoy me, and about women's place and what women are supposed to do or not do. And those kinds of things will always annoy me and irritate me and make me angry. And so even if that's appropriate for the time and place, and I'm not blaming the author for including that, that's a part of the reality, so that should be included. But those were just parts that made the characters that said them less likable to me. Did you like how the story was told and the style of writing? It's definitely quite different than some of the books I've read and all the characters that were introduced. Yeah, I did enjoy the way the story is told. There are a lot of characters and that could be confusing, and especially when they all have names that are foreign to me, and so that makes it more difficult to keep track of who's who. But I didn't feel that was confusing in this case. I felt that all of the characters came alive and had their different sets of like personality and motivation and way of thinking. And so even if a character did something that I didn't agree with, it still made sense for that character to behave in that way. And so I appreciated that. I also liked that there was this omniscient narrator, so that even if we're following a specific character in a chapter, we still get to know how other characters are feeling and thinking in that scene. And that just makes it all make more sense to me. So yeah, I like that aspect of it as well. And there was so much hardship in this story, and to me it felt like that was told in a very like objective and like straightforward way, and still in a very beautiful way. So it wasn't like overly dramatic or sentimental. It just was. And it was still so easy to understand what that would feel like in those situations. And yeah, there were definitely moments where I cried reading this, and yeah, I thought it was beautifully written and that the story was very well told. Did you wish there was more on Sunya? I think she might possibly be my favorite character so far. I think there was a pretty good balance between the different characters. I feel like the main focus was always on Sunya, and then the others were kind of like add-ons. I really liked Sunya as well, but I really appreciated hearing the other characters' perspectives too. I think I wished that there was more about the mother, Yang Jin, and also the sister-in-law, Kyung Hee. And yeah, I would just like to know more about their backstory and their goals and dreams and, you know, things like that, because I feel like those people were told kind of surface level, and there was just like a little peek into their minds and their lives. And I would probably have wanted to know more about them. How did you find the storytelling and how it interconnected with history? I don't know very much at all about the history of Asian countries, specifically like eastern part of Asia. So I learned a lot reading this book. I had no idea about the conflict between Korea and Japan, and I didn't know about the discrimination and mistreatment of Koreans in Japan. And so, yeah, I learned a lot, and I really liked that aspect of reading this book. And I also think that it brought the conflict and like the big political things down on a very human level, and showed in very like concrete ways how that affected real people and what that experience was like for them. And then for the last question from Mimi, she says, this next one, you can kind of think of me as discussing the book, and you can reply to it or not, whatever you want to do. Of course, I will reply to it. I find that many view Japan through a lens of mostly positive light, going as far as to forget some of the atrocities they've done prior to World War II. I felt like this book reminded me that society is sadly the same when boiled down, which is a bit depressing while I was reading it, but I'm glad that this book portrayed history so realistically, while giving it a creative but possibly realistic twist on the impacts of colonialism and the people's struggles. How did you feel while reading it? Yeah, I would say I agree with that. And like I said, I learned a lot reading this. And even though it was like sad and heavy and depressing, it also sort of fit the pattern of conflict and discrimination in so many places in the world. So in that sense, it wasn't surprising, but like that's depressing in and of itself, because it's just like, oh, another tragedy, another conflict that ruined people's lives, and another, you know, set of peoples who can't get along because of what country they're from. And it's just like maddening that that's going on everywhere. So yeah, I definitely get what you mean. And I also agree that Japan is mostly seen through a positive light. Like when I think of Japan, it's either like Zen moss gardens or like fast trains and like space-like technology, or it's like neon lights in Tokyo and anime and all of that kind of culture and like cute cats. I think of the people as being very polite and having very strict work ethic and being very respectful toward their elders, and like there being this hierarchy in that sense. But I have never thought of the Japanese as being discriminating against Koreans. Like that has never been on my radar at all. And so that was an interesting thing to learn more about. I did know before reading this that there was something about Christianity being forbidden in Japan, which sort of doesn't make sense with my image of Japan, but it also makes sense to me because of the consequences of like missionaries bringing their religion onto other people and colonialism, and yeah, the consequences of that are not very great. So like that was to me a kind of sensible decision. Like, don't come here and put your religion on us. Thank you. That makes sense to me, but I didn't know a lot more about it. And so it was, yeah, a lot to learn from reading this book. And I also feel like I just scratched the surface of all of that. And so this was like a peek into some people's lives during a very long period of time, but it's still like so much more has happened before that and since that, and to other people and on different levels in society. And so like, I'm not saying I have learned everything there is to know about the history in Japan or in Korea or any of that, but it was a little peek into this whole set of culture and history and conflict and dynamics between people. And I guess I would say it was an eye-opening novel in that sense, giving a little peek into all of that and like how much more there is to learn about that history and part of the world. And so for the last question, I'm going to answer one of the two questions that Helen asked. I love a book that makes me feel something. What was your main emotion on finishing the book? And also, was that key emotion surprising? Maybe this isn't a specific emotion, but what I was feeling was just empathy. There was just so much hardship and struggle and hustle and dealing with different kinds of situations, you know, situations that were very universal, like love and family and work and education and illness and loss and worry. And then there were also situations that were more specific to this time and place and these groups of people and the culture and all of that. And so my general feeling was just empathy for these characters, but also like people in general. And like, we go through so many things, and some of us definitely go through more than others. I guess I also felt gratitude for not being in that situation and empathy for the people who are. And also, was that key emotion surprising? No, I wouldn't say that it was surprising. I was expecting it to be emotional and full of hardship and struggle. And so those were expectations that were met, and no, I wasn't really surprised by that. It would have been nice to read it at a bit slower pace, but I'm still glad that I read it, and I think it's worthy of the praise that it's gotten. And yeah, I'm very glad I finally got to reading it. Those were all of the questions, and I would love to hear your answers either in the comments or in a video if you want to participate that way. That will be a lot of fun. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you're having a fantastic day, and I will see you in the next one. Also, if you haven't seen the discussion on the Song of Achilles yet, you can watch that video here. Okay, bye. Hello and welcome to the Ellenmade Book Club. Today we have another book club discussion, and we are talking about Pachinko by Min Jin. Oh my god, that's too close. Okay.